Hello everyone, and welcome in. My name is David, and we're going to be reading a classic children's story with a little bit of a twist. I hope you like it. Not far from London, there once lived a widow and her son Jack. They were so poor that often they didn't have enough to eat. And as Jack was a lazy boy who never liked to work, matters grew worse and worse for his poor mother. Then came a day when they had to sell their cow. With tears in her eyes, the poor woman told Jack to take the cow to market and get the best price he could for it. So Jack, leading the cow, set off. He had not gone far when he met a man who asked him, "Are you taking your cow to market, Jack?" "Yes," answered Jack, wondering how the stranger knew his name. "I'll buy the cow from you," said the man. "I have some magic beans here that I will give you in exchange for the cow." Jack couldn't resist the wonderful-looking beans that the man showed him and gladly gave the cow to the man in exchange. When his mother learned what he had done, she burst into tears and threw the beans out of the window. As for Jack, he crept off to bed without his supper, feeling very much ashamed of himself and hungry as well. But the next morning, when he looked from his window, he saw a wonderful sight. The beans had taken root in the garden, and the great stalks twined together, forming an enormous ladder leading up, 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 into the sky as far as he could see. Forgetting everything else, Jack climbed from his window into the beanstalk. He climbed and climbed and climbed, and at the very top he found himself in a strange and silent country. He was tired and hungry and glad to see a castle close by. He walked to the castle and was able to make his way in through a small hole in the door. He shouted, "Hello!" But there was no answer, and he thought the castle may be empty. Jack made his way to the kitchen where he found some leftover bread and soup. Scarcely had Jack begun to eat the soup when there came a frightful banging outside the door. He quickly hid in the oven because he wasn't sure who or what was coming. Suddenly, a giant appeared in the doorway and roared, "Fee, fi, fo, fum. I smell the blood of an Englishman." Jack was terrified and didn't move. The giant grumbled and sat down by the fire to eat his supper. Jack watched him from inside the oven. The giant ate steadily for a long time, but at last he wiped his mouth on the corner of the tablecloth and shouted, "Wife, fetch me my bags of gold." His wife went to a huge cupboard and got down 3 bags so heavy she could scarcely carry them. Then she set them on the table beside the giant. He dumped the shining coins onto the tablecloth, and Jack's eyes grew round. He had never seen so much money before in his life. The giant scooped them into a pile and spent a long time counting them into another pile. Then he began to nod. He had not finished putting his treasure back in the bags before he fell fast asleep. Jack crept stealthily out of the oven and was reaching for a bag of gold when, to his horror, a little dog ran out and began to bark at him. The giant stirred and muttered, but he did not wake up, and the dog went back to his place under the chair by the fire. Quickly, Jack seized one of the bags and ran out of the house, and to the top of the beanstalk and down and home. His mother had worried because Jack had been gone a day and a night. But when she saw the bag of gold he had brought her, she was overjoyed and called him the best son in the world. Jack was very happy to hear this, you may be sure, and for a long time, he and his mother lived very well on all the fine things they could buy with the money. There came a day, however, when only a few coins were left, and Jack resolved to climb the beanstalk once again and visit the giant's castle. This time, he waited outside the castle until the bakery man came to deliver 20 loaves of bread at the kitchen door. Then Jack crept in while the door was open and hid in a huge copper pot. Soon the giant came home for dinner. As soon as he entered the house, he looked about him and roared, "Fee, fi, fo, fum. I smell the blood of an Englishman." "Nonsense, dear," said his wife. The giant grumbled louder this time, but he sat down to a whole roast pig and a goblet of wine the size of a goldfish bowl. After dinner, the giant called for his little hen. The woman fetched it and set the pretty hen on the table. Every time the giant said, "Little hen, pretty hen, lay me an egg," the little hen clucked and sang and laid an egg of solid gold. Jack opened his eyes at this, you may be sure, and he decided he must and would have that hen for himself. Soon the giant began to nod and before long fell asleep, snoring horribly. Then, being careful not to make any noise, Jack crept out of the copper pot, seized the hen, and ran off with her. He found his way back to the beanstalk much more quickly than he had come, and he had climbed down and reached the house just at dusk. His mother had worried for fear Jack had fallen into the hands of the giant. She was overjoyed to see him and the pretty hen he had brought her. With the little hen laying golden eggs every day, Jack and his mother were soon well off again, and for a few months, this suited Jack very well. But he soon became restless for adventure, and so he decided to climb the beanstalk one more time. Jack slipped into the kitchen again, and soon after the giant stomped into the house roaring so loudly the pots rattled on the stove, Jack quickly hid in the wood box. "Fee, fi, fo, fum. I smell the blood of an Englishman." "What foolishness," his wife said. The giant grumbled louder still, but sat down to a bowl the size of a bathtub filled with stew and began to eat noisily. After supper, he called for his harp. Jack looked out from the wood box to see the most beautiful harp imaginable. The giant had only to say, "Play," and the exquisite music came from the instrument. Here was a treasure Jack wanted much more than the magic hen. "I will surely steal that wonderful harp, come what will," said Jack to himself. In a little while, the lovely music had lulled the giant to sleep. Jack waited until he heard the giant snoring loudly. Then he got out of the wood box and stole over to the table. As he was reaching for the harp, it began to cry, "Master! Master!" But Jack seized it and ran to the heavy door. He just managed to pull it open before the giant woke up with a mighty roar and started after him. Jack had never been so terrified or run so fast in his life. Yet the giant, with his huge steps, soon overcame the distance between them. Jack could feel the giant's breath like a hot wind on his back, and he reached the beanstalk only just in time. With the giant right behind him, Jack clambered down more quickly than I would like to think, with the beanstalk swaying and creaking with the weight of the pursuing giant. Once on the ground, Jack shouted for a hatchet, and his mother came flying out of the house with one in her hand. Quickly, and with all of his might, Jack began hacking at the giant beanstalk until it fell with a mighty crash, and the giant was never to be seen again. Jack asked his mother to forgive him for all of the problems that he had caused her and promised to stay out of trouble. He kept his word, and they lived happily and well for the rest of their lives. The end. Of course, it was the story of Jack and the Beanstalk. I hope everyone enjoyed the experience. We'll see you next time. Have a great day. Bye, everybody.